Because the thing with AmeriCorps is that they really wanted the position too, they wanna put their people places.
Yeah.
So it's important for them to get it done too.
Exactly. There's the Plainfield Select Board meeting. Starting at 6:02 on 12/2/24. So I'm calling the meeting to order and
All 5 members present.
all 5 members are present. And our town clerk and road foreman and commissioner are here.
Wow.
Changes to the agenda, the fire and rescue department are not gonna be ready for tonight, so they're gonna take that off the agenda. We do want to add health insurance discussion, which Peter, you did a huge amount of work on, thank you for that.
Yeah.
But we need to get some decision made on that tonight. Let's see, what else do I have? You have a question?
Well, probably dropping the warning for the planning commission.
We are dropping the warning for the planning commission because they are not ready.
They are not ready.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they're gonna do interim rules.
No.
They sent us a message saying they're not gonna do interim rules, so
Yes,
they don't need us to do a hearing for interim rules.
right, right. So we're just take that out as
So we're
well.
taking that out too, okay.
Will we act on the East Montpelier ambulance services contract, Graham?
I don't know, I mean, I'd like to sort of hear from the fire department to confirm,
Yeah, okay.
you know, I don't.
I don't think we can,
Without the
I don't think we
players.
have anything to.
Without the players.
Just give you a little bit of input.
Yeah,
You don't know, just very quickly, like,
Maybe it's to check in when it's time for
yeah, okay.
for that on the ambulance contract.
Okay, so there's some changes to the agenda, but that's all I know of at the moment.
I just want to ask one thing, what, anything new about Bean Road, I know I saw the last letter and.
Let's talk about that next,
Okay,
after announcements.
okay,
Let's see, I had a couple announcements. I just want to remind people the regular meeting is 12/9 next week, and then the budget meeting will be 12/16. That's when the fire department is going to be planning to be here.
They're both Mondays.
oh, good.
What do we do the following week? It's not, we're not going to do it on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, I imagine. So-
I'm not in town on the 23rd.
Okay, yeah, well, I wouldn't have a meeting then.
I could phone in.
Maybe another day of the week, if we need to.
The week of Christmas,
No, the week before,
well, the week before we're meeting on the 16th.
we still have a
Yeah.
meeting. Yeah, so I'm
We're
just,
meeting on the 16th.
yes, that's, yes,
So
that's
I
the
guess the
plan.
question is that the last meeting before the new year?
Yeah, we're trying to get our budget done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we really need to have a consensus in early January on the budget.
Okay,
I mean, I just think in order to get everything
yeah,
in order for March meeting.
yeah, I agree.
I mean, the biggies are highway, admin
And
and fire.
fire, those are the biggies.
And I mean, if we can get those done by this, on the 16th. And then like all the smaller ones, we could probably do in one other meeting.
Yeah,
In the new year? Are we like fully taking the end of December off for meetings, or are we trying to meet?
I'm
I'm,
open to meet, but I know others have.
I
Yeah.
sent my availability,
sent-
so I
yeah.
have days available. I don't have any days available the week of the 23rd.
yeah,
I have 2 days available the week of the 30th,
okay,
or 1 day available the week of, yeah, so I sent you my availability, that's why I sent you my availability, is so that. If we had to schedule late December meetings.
well, we should know a lot more on the 16th. So why don't we make our new date then? I just wanted to get a sense from people what they wanted to do. Another announcement I have is I am gonna be taking a little time off, so I'm gonna miss the last meeting in January. I can Zoom it, but I won't be here. And first meeting in February, we're taking my dog. We're going on a trip to see brothers, so just heads up on that.
So the 27th and the 10th.
Yeah. I think that's right. Yeah, the 27th, yes. Okay, public comment. Patty, do you wanna ask something?
I just wondered what was going on with Bean Road, last I saw that it looks like he's kind of clueless about. If that's okay to say, it looks like doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah, that's really convenient, I know, but he doesn't, and but it's gonna go to court. So we have to wait for court to make a decision.
So we sent him the letter with
Yeah,
200, I don't know, lots and lots of money in fines. And
Yes.
he responded that he's willing to pay $200 in fines, and which is obviously not, so then it's gonna go to court.
He said, I'm not paying the court fees.
Well, that's
Yeah.
not
I
up to
know,
him.
that's what he
That's
said.
not up, I mean, that's
No.
not up to him,
No.
not up to us, it's not up to him.
I just don't think he doesn't, I just don't think he knows what's going on, like, I don't know.
He's been told many times and
Yeah.
it's now going to court,
Yeah, okay,
so we have to wait for that.
alright, thanks.
Yep,
And that'll be a while, I imagine.
it'll be a while, yeah, I'm sure it'll be after the first of the year. So fire and rescue, we're not gonna do tonight, and I guess.
Is there any other public comment?
I'm sorry?
Did you ask if there's other public comment?
Oh, I didn't. Is there any public comment? Okay. Thank you, Dan. So we're going to take out the fire and rescue budget review because they won't be here until the 16th. And I understood that we needed to have an ambulance contract signed, but I guess we don't have to do it tonight. We can do it next week.
Well, I mean, I haven't heard anything from Jonathan.
Okay.
I think, you know. I don't feel. I would like, I thought he was gonna be here tonight, so
Yeah.
I thought that we could just do it like that, but.
Okay. We'll put that on the table for at the very latest, the 16th.
Well, and he let us know like a week ago that he wasn't gonna make it here tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
He had emailed and said that he was unavailable between dates that included tonight, that he was available again next Monday.
Yeah, and I asked if one of the other
Yeah.
and he checked with Greg and he checked with yeah.
I mean, the challenge with this, even though I think, there are clear indications of the direction he'd like to go in, I would, before we sign off, I just would like to confirm that. I mean,
Yeah.
That is, what's your feeling about it? I mean, do you think we can act tonight or?
Well,
I'd rather, unless we have a contract.
I mean. Let's see, contract, but I think budgetarily, like, if you look at what the increases have been year over year, they haven't really kept pace with costs of. Doing business.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would prefer to think of it as like, potentially like. Maybe in the last 3 years, we received a bit of a deal.
Mhm.
That hasn't really kept pace with what their costs likely are.
Yep.
I think that when I talk about it with Jonathan, I would say that like I think a budgetary ceiling like of 65,000 is probably fits into what they probably should have got up to in the time since we've had signed our last contract. Now, they also are they wanted to propose a 3-year contract with double-digit % increases each year, which does not seem like a deal to me. Like, we've had a lot of inflationary situations recently, but like, I really can't see like how they could justify the cost over 3 years. An adjustment maybe, but I think maybe a 1-year contract at 65 would be the best option, and then try to negotiate for a lower, a more sensible percentage increase over the next 3 years.
Well, we'll
But
okay, but that's good background. And did you say 65 or 55?
65.
55.
6
I'm not hearing, okay,
As a budget cap.
as a budget.
I would say for this year,
Yeah, I thought they had requested 58.
it's no, I think it's more than that. I think it was
Maybe 58 is this year's number.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
I
we'll,
don't have that in front of me.
But I know from talking, the email, Jonathan's email, and I got a call from somebody else on the crew here, and I can't remember the guy's name. They questioned the data as to whether the
Well, that's the other thing, is
Plainfield and Marshfield,
we need to plot all these calls and make sure that we're not paying for Marshfield to meet Montpelier
yeah,
potential calls.
I mean, Jonathan sent a grid, and he said the numbers just don't make sense,
yeah,
so.
but he also knows that the time is short, we have to sign something this month, so
Yeah.
one year makes sense to him.
And was there a chance about a 1-year contract with Barry? Did I?
No,
No,
No.
Not this
they
year,
said they can't, they're not onboarding any more customers this year.
not this year.
right,
They're already onboarding one new customer, Williamstown, and they don't wanna bring on two at the same time.
okay, so we'll put that on, I'll talk to Jonathan and try to get it either next meeting or the meeting after, but. One of those two. Highway Department. Josh, you wanna lead us into that and probably lead us into the paperwork you left us?
So in the horizontal format, you have what's output by our accounting software. And so, you know, that software essentially is it's a garden that needs to be tended, and it was not tended very well over the past few years. And so there are errors and gaps in there. Now, the first page has revenue in the horizontal configuration, and then the general government starts on page 2. And under the header general government 100-300. The in organizing like the town financial record going forward, in competition with our bookkeeper, Penny
Bullard.
Bullard. So Penny Bullard used to be the senior accountant at the city of Barry,
Mhm.
and is really quite familiar with there's, how a chart account should be structured. And so a lot of those changes are based on the recommendations. I feel strongly that that is the way to go. So under the original highway department, which did on the horizontal sheets is highway department is 100-5100. And so what we've done is we've taken out the costs of the benefits, insurance, and loan expenses and interests to either go into general government so that we can more clearly see what we're spending on our health insurance, on our liability insurance, and instead of breaking it out in between all the departments. And I think this gives us a better sense of like, what is the actual operational cost to run the highway department, absent like the overhead, right, which is somewhat uncontrolled. So we're taking that overhead cost out and focusing on controllables. So so on the vertical sheet here, starting from labor road foreman, we have $78,000, and then overtime road foreman $6,000. That is approximately that's about an average of 3 hours of overtime per week year round, and it sloshes a bit depending on.
So you said the vertical sheets, there's no numbers on this.
Well, they're right there in the column. 100-5100.
Yeah, I
No,
see.
but there's no dollar.
There's no dollar amounts in
So-
there.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying, yeah, but there are.
I need these to you to make your own notes in, and I'm gonna tell you what
Oh,
you
okay,
feel is the correct number, and then if you have any questions or reasons that you may want to dig a little deeper into it, we can do that, but so.
So labor, the foreman, you said was what?
$78,000.
Yep.
Overtime road foreman, $6,000. The labor equipment operator is our new hire, $58,250.
58,250.
Overtime equipment operator 1, $4,500. And this is basically a similar amount of overtime. Likely, the actual reality would be that the foreman would probably have more overtime. It was a bit difficult looking at overtime with all of the like, so, you know, we just went with what made sense. And then equipment operator number 2 is $69,000. Overtime equipment operator 2, $5,300. And then we have $2,000 for fuel and furnace.
Wait, so it was labor equipment operator 2 was $69,000?
Yes, and the overtime is $5,300.
Okay.
Then that is our labor cost. That we are budgeting for the highway department.
And then you're moving all the fringe into general,
Yes, so that we can.
including FICA.
Yeah, so all of that will be covered under like general government. The next line is fuel and furnace. $2,000. Electric, $1,400. Telephone, and internet, $2,500.
Is that just for the highway,
That is for, yes, that's for the highway,
the mobile phones and all
mobile
that?
phones,
Okay,
the internet, the telephone, the landline and
okay,
and other costs.
Yep.
Fuel, oil and gas. $47,000. And. That is a very modest increase. It, it basically tracks with what we actually paid in the fiscal year 2024. So it was not a significant increase in cost. You got something.
Alright, I'll let them know.
mileage,
The $200 for mileage, mostly placeholder. Gravel, we have $110,000 for gravel. And then for sand, we have $58,000 for sand. And for that number, we did go back and look at all the fiscal years since 21-22 fiscal year to get a good sense of like what is, when we convert it to cubic yards and tonnage, and cost, and then settled in on that number for sand. So we're really pretty confident that that is like a very accurate number to give us like the right quantity of sand to budget. Now,
okay.
our actual expenditure has been pretty warm this year. It may, it was what we felt was appropriate. Now, the next line, contracts, mowing and sweeping. One of the things that we discussed today was potentially, you'll see that contracts, mowing and sweeping, I spelled sweeping wrong, twice even, is a total of $10,000. Now, the sweeping is $2,500, but and then the mowing, we're holding $7,500. What we'd like to look at is exploring getting what is the thing?
A roadside mower.
A roadside mower, thank you. And so we did some analysis of like the labor output to accomplish something versus contracting, or versus purchasing the equipment. I think if we can find one that we can finance for for less than $7,500 a year, that it would be a significant savings in labor because we could purchase a piece of equipment that would be, I would say, you would think superior to what we generally see the contractor using.
Yeah. This
would be a radical savings over the long term to purchase that piece of equipment. So I've split that $7,500 out to be a placeholder for potentially finance that piece of equipment. I think that would be quite quite prudent.
Are we going to consider having that for the town meeting, that choice of that equipment, or is this something you're just getting us alerted to? Cause it won't happen till next summer.
Yeah, right now, this is, you know, this, holding this, item here as like a budgetary line item, and then, you know, and then we put that in, and then, you know, we're gonna explore that because I think it's a good move, but,
Okay, well, you'll bring that to the board later on,
yeah,
right?
and,
You're talking about one of these contraptions that attaches and then it goes out and
Yeah.
they can pull it back when to go around the mailbox and.
It would also be prudent for trimming brush that's getting overgrown instead of having to do it by hand, which would be a little bit more efficient and.
You'd have,
So
you'd have it
it-
accessible year round.
that was that was where when we looked at sort of the hours, that, you know, we did some estimates of like, okay. I picked a random location in the roads and said to Mike, okay, we don't have this piece of equipment, say the mowers come through and you wanna trim the brush, how many hours does it take? You know, and then looking at like our wages that we would spend on that hours. It is like. You know, if you're looking at. What it would cost to do that without the equipment, it was a order of magnitude difference, and so.
I think it was $5,000 different. Price.
Yeah. I have my notes right here with that, but. $10,000,
Is that considering that we're trying to upgrade? I mean, have you,
so there is a separate, culvert, there's a project. Right, so that is sort of for the fiscal year, 25-26. Now, if you scroll down, you can see that there is a culvert projects line, and we'll get to that, and, you know, I would
okay,
wanna look at setting up a reserve fund so that we could do that upgrading, but for now, for
yeah,
the fiscal year, the, you know, $10,000 per culverts.
You're talking just routine maintenance.
The, you know, purchasing culverts, it's really something that I think would benefit from having a reserve fund, given the years, the last 2 years. Putting in the effort to build a fund, that would fund that in perpetuity. To where, build that fund up so that we can draw down on that and have that as a reserve fund, to upsize the culverts, but it would be to take that on in the fiscal year 25-26. It's just kind of, that's just too much there, but it's something that we need to consider going forward, and if, of course, the board might get, but.
so.
Allocate more money to the culvert project.
So,
So
but then this is,
it sounds like Peter's question was, is this kind of a normal amount?
Yes,
Given
so
us-
it's the same as last year, right?
Okay,
it's,
yeah, that's,
I think maybe as we go through this, and I know we have both of these, but if you could tell us the amount and then tell us how that compares to last year, so like the next one is salt.
so if you.
Just
look
because
at-
I feel like it's a little hard to like, hearing just the raw number as you write it down doesn't really give us enough context.
Yeah, so if you kind of skid over here, to the horizontal, we have a line item for culverts that is, we budgeted $10,000 for this.
Last year, or
Yes.
this current year.
So we're just gonna carry that forward, and then there is actually budgeted culvert projects at $11,000. None of that is, I think all of that is in the general fund, so we kind of have a duplication of funding. I don't believe there's a reserve fund for culverts.
No.
Yeah, so the, specific to a project of like, or upsizing. And this is something that we just didn't have time to get into, like, what would be the applicable spend to create,
But so there's no difference in the amount you're asking for from last year. You're asking that we make sure that we earmark it in a very specific way.
Yes,
Okay.
so like the you know, there are things that are called projects on this on the last 2-year budget worksheet that have no reserve fund associated with them. They're just sort of like there.
Well, there's money, it looks like they've broken it up, like there's money. To buy things like an actual physical culvert, and then there's money that would cost to actually put in the culvert. The projects is the actual work piece, right?
Well, I would say that instead of having like it break down like that, if you need to, if in the fiscal year we're budgeting for, you've got $10,000 to spend on culverts, you could spend $100,000 on culverts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe that's it, they're expensive.
they're expensive, they're going to get more expensive with tariffs and associated economics, so we really need to do some like long-term planning on how we're gonna like supply the money for that. So I think like for now, what I would say is that $10,000 for culverts, and then there's 11,000 that is under culvert projects. But I want to explore setting up a reserve fund for that, so that that money is held in situ for that. Because otherwise it's just in the general fund and, you know, you can spend it down.
I could see where, you know, you could have like an ongoing sort of general amount, depends how pick a number for, you know, just general maintenance of culverts as it comes up. And you could also have a project in a given year saying, hey, we know there's something special, it's sort of an aberration this year. And you might want to single that out. And if you had a reserve fund,
This is how we handle like pipes in the water commission. You know, we will have a reserve for, say, like the School Street water line replacement that we've funded out for quite a number of years at this point. And I would say it would be prudent to treat that the same way.
yeah, rather than getting hit in one fiscal year with a bump,
Yeah,
you would spread it, yep.
so the next item, hot mix paving, this was where we took money out. You know, sometimes we go down. You know, the $22,500 for hot mix paving. And we had in the budgetary year 24, $10,000, and the budgetary year 25, $7,000. And so the idea was the hot mix and what was the other thing?
Cold patch.
Gold patch. So this is for spot repair. Now, when we looked at the paving, there is a paving fund, much like I would like there to be a culvert fund. There is a paving fund. Some money was, I think, was not transferred to the paving fund due to the financial danger.
So what happened, the money was never spent on anything but the paving fund, it was all returned to the paving fund. So in other words, at one point, we were in such a cash flow crisis, I was nervous about checks clearing.
Right.
I ended up borrowing from the paving fund, but I ended up putting it back because, and this is something to consider at town meeting. It is common practice for towns in Vermont to borrow from reserve funds in time of crisis, but that has to be pre-approved by the select board. So I would want you to consider putting on for this coming year's warning, you know, having an article basically saying that if the select board deems there to be a financial emergency, we could borrow from reserve funds with the notion that they will be paid back. But we did not spend any reserve funds on emergency stuff. It was all returned. I was just doing it out of abundance of caution.
And
How much is in that fund?
like according to the what I have here, $62,144 from the printout.
That's the paving fund?
Yeah, I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know if it actually did make it back in. let's talk about that later, but
Okay,
the I'm not worried about it, but we have a paving fund. The good news is that we spent a reasonable amount of time going through what are the distances that we are looking at in to pave the roads. And you know, so we don't have a great deal of paved roads, approximately
2 miles, I'd say.
2 miles. So we said, okay, well, straight shots, they're mostly about a quarter mile, so there's 8 of those. So averaging that out over time, the 8 units every other year, doing paving at a current cost of about $13,500. And so what we would want is we want to replenish a fund to be able to maintain and grow with costs growing. And I think we're very close to that with where we probably should be in the paving fund to sustain the paving year over year, decade over decade. So
So what number should we use in would you say?
hot mix paving is the non-fund associated immediate purchases of paving for patching and potholes and such of $2,500. And then the next item is salt.
Oh, just a question on the paving, sorry. So we just had some paving done on the temporary bridge, which is not part of this budget, but it was $42,000. So is $2,500 enough? I mean,
No, this is strictly for,
That's just for immediate purchases for like,
Just
patching
patching.
potholes through.
oh, okay.
This isn't going towards the reserve fund.
Oh, okay, all
I
right.
think
Just
this
want to be
is,
clear on that.
this is
So
strictly.
there's a paving projects.
Yes,
All the way, it's the bottom line on this one, so there will be a bigger number coming.
yeah,
Okay,
and-
all right, okay.
So, and then this is where. Like, if you notice on the horizontal sheet, there are like the numerical items, there's. On the vertical one, I only have the header, and these will get sorted into a logical order. With whether it is materials or labor or et cetera, so there is some sorting still to do in the chart account here, but let's see. Salt, I think I was pretty like conservative on salt, and you were like, we need a little more, and we settled on 18,000 for salt. This was one of those tricky ones where it oscillates quite a bit, and we went back and forth for the last 4 fiscal periods to kind of figure out like, okay, what is the maximum amount of salt? And I believe that the maximum salt amount that we spent for one fiscal year was just shy of 19,000, and then some were much lower. So we were comfortable with 18,000 as a budgetary number. If it's higher, then it's not significant.
So on the horizontal sheet, we're looking at 22.
Yes, but
You're saying it's actually should.
But we actually spent 11,847
yeah,
in 2024.
you know, if I go back to
Yeah,
salt,
So
like,
we can make it less.
Yeah.
It sounds
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Which was a really warm winter.
like
Yeah. Well, yeah, something you're saying it's never been over 19,000, so.
so like if I go back.
So would you like to make it 19 then?
No, I think 18 is good.
18, okay.
Like I saw like 22, 23 saw actual. Where is salt? Was 17,574, I think one was 15K, so it's like,
Yeah, 18 seems reasonable.
yeah. Chloride,
What's the difference? Is this what gets mixed with sand?
The chloride is what we use in the summertime after we grade the road to keep the dust
Keep the
down.
dust in.
It's liquid, yeah.
yeah, and I've made a split out here as a placeholder, chloride and chloride equipment. So chloride being quite
Corrosive.
quite vigorous in terms of its reaction with metals. It does require a lot of equipment replacement. And so this one year over year would oscillate quite a bit. And so what I suggest we do is just hold chloride equipment as non-funded and then set 24,000, which I think is pretty close. It was,
24 the last,
yeah, so that's a level
24 the
funded,
last 2 years.
but some years it would hit just over 24,000 and then it would come down every couple of years and go up. So what I'd like to see over the next 2 years is to go, what did we spend on actually the chloride and what did we spend on the chloride equipment? And then, so we can understand how to smooth out that cost of that item.
So we'll leave the chloride equipment blank for now, yeah.
And so probably in the next budget round, we'll have some idea. It may take a couple of years to kind of settle into what is normative. Mulch is $1,000. Uniforms are $3,000. Tires are $9,000. And there's a modest increase in uniforms. Some of that is down to just having a new hire.
You said tires is $9,000.
Yes. Chains is $10,000. Catch basins is $11,000. So those last few, after chloride to chains, the safety equipment, $500. Sidewalks, $500, and that's really just like immediate repairs to damage in sidewalks, not not pursuing a fund. I don't think there is a sidewalk fund, but this is another place where we could look at creating a fund to, there are going to be a lot of there's so many unknowns with where people are going to live, where we're going to build houses, new patterns of conveyance for like people who are in a car, like we're going to have to create a fund to address like the need for this new pattern that our town is going to have. And
Do we not have like just the general maintenance thing, a certain amount we do to like, there's some older sidewalks in town, like we don't every year just replace certain parts just so that we're keeping up in some way. I know V-Trans, I know there's like Virgins, I think last year V-Trans went through and did like a huge sidewalk project, is like they worked through, I don't know if we're on their list or how that works, but.
Well, that's a good point. I would suggest that fund mostly pays for the engineering, because mostly we're gonna probably have to go for grants to get sidewalks. So,
right.
Well, but I meant like current like sidewalks on roads that aren't in fact affected by the floods.
yeah, I'm thinking that too, though. I mean, if we're gonna need, whether it's going up to the new community or whether it's going to
Yeah.
Goddard, we're gonna need engineering.
Right, and so the fund would really cover that engineering and matching when the time comes, and right now, do we need to build a sidewalk? Maybe, I would like one in front of my house that is non-existent at this point. I mean. Like, across the phone, guys, like.
Yeah.
What Michael is going to do is to get an example quote. Right, so we kind of go, okay, like, if you were going to, like, the sidewalk that goes from the town line on Route 2 back towards the village, like, is in disrepair. Like, let's get a quote from a company that installs sidewalks, so we can kind of build like, okay, what is the target that we need to aim for here?
You're talking about from outer spice down, you're talking.
Yeah, well, it would,
Yeah,
our spaces where the sidewalk is.
yeah,
Well, that's where the town line is.
yeah, it's a little
Yeah,
before
that's
that,
not-
from there all the way back to in front of where Josh is living now.
Right, but and a couple of those buildings along there, so it's like three properties are considered for buyouts, so.
Right,
there's
they may
an
disappear.
implication there.
So that is a new fund that I'm proposing that we create, but for now, I didn't have a logical number to place in that holding spot. The next one is sidewalk snow removal,
Mhm.
$7,500.
Is that a new item? I don't see it in.
It's on the,
It's not under the highway department, in the new chart of accounts, we've put it under the highway. And we're exploring what it would cost to purchase a tractor.
Yeah.
That would, and we haven't had any offers taken up in requests for proposals to do that work. And I think that, you know, I've talked around to people, and there are people who would be interested in doing that work, but unfortunately, because they would be contracted, would require to be insured and bonded. And it's that requirement that creates the residents to take that on. So, like, I think that, you know, this is another place where we could look at, you know,
Buying the equipment and hiring a temp.
or hiring more like maybe a part-timer that would have you know, more flexible hours in the sort of peak winter and summer, and then on the shoulder seasons, you know, could float to you know, assisting in preparation for winter or and things like that, but not necessarily hiring somebody with CDL or with all of the training required. The current tractor we have is from 1988.
Yeah, it's older than I am.
And
You need a CDL to drive on a sidewalk?
No.
I kind of think maybe it would be a good idea, if you really think about it. So sidewalk snow removal is you know, is something that as somebody who likes to walk on the sidewalk is confounding, and I've not been very pleased with the quality of work that I'm seeing. And on the one hand, no one wants to take it on, and I think that the hiring of a temporary person could be, and equipment could be a good idea.
but that's not in this budget then.
That's not in this budget.
Michael, just as a side question, since no one wants to take it on, what's the current plan for sidewalk cleaning for this winter? If we don't get any bids?
We don't have any equipment to do it right now, so.
And we don't have the labor
Mm.
rate because we're down at 66% capacity.
So we're, no, so I'm just, so there is a likelihood that sidewalks will not be cleared by the town this winter.
I shoveled from my house to the fire
No,
department.
lots of people will shovel where they can. I just wanted to make sure that we're,
But we do
Okay, clear.
have some money if like we were to go out and beat the bushes and find someone to respond to it.
We absolutely could pay somebody if they would take it up. But we could also apply this sidewalk snow removal as what we would use to pay into a loan or to purchase a short-term loan to purchase the equipment.
what do,
$40,000, I think, so.
what do neighboring towns do? Do they just have equipment or do they have?
Cabot has equipment, Berrytown hired it out, he passed away last year, so I'm not sure what they're doing this year.
What about Marshfield?
They hired out, it's all along Route 2. Somebody goes over the grass seed spreader and a walk behind snow blower.
My other guy wants some more work.
You get two off by snow blowers for $7,500.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, we still need to have another
There's
person.
a substantial, a lot more sidewalks in Plainfield than there is Marshfield.
Got it.
yeah. It's about the same as the paving. Yeah, so it's like 2 miles.
It's quite a bit, you go all the way to the post office, you go all the way to Outer Spice, plus you do both sides of the road down here in the village on Beach Street and Mill Street all the way up to Brook Road.
Mhm.
Out as well as up to the Garden.
What kind of equipment? It's not a walk behind, it's a riding.
It's like a small tractor that's a 25 horse, it would have a cab with heat and of course, so.
Right.
it's out there.
One of those little
It
clear
has a snow
plastic.
blower on it, I also got a price with a street sweeper broom for it, so if you get only an inch of dry snow, you could use the broom to brush it off instead of putting salt on, which is corrosive to concrete as well.
But it would be a snow blower device, so you could direct where the snow's going.
Right.
Yeah, there's another, in the quote, though, one of the notes in there was that they set up, I think it was it
The town of Richford,
Richford, and they opted for a blade.
yeah, the two-way blade.
I think
instead
that
of a
might
blower.
actually be better for the configuration of the sidewalks we have, but that's just my view.
But we're talking about, Route 2 improvements and village expansion. We're probably talking the future with more sidewalks.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
Yeah.
So,
So having a machine would help, but we're gonna have to have the labor to run it.
right, and but in terms of like the sidewalk snow removal line item. $7,500 is either far more than what we would need to pay in a year for refinance something. And then, or, paying back the equipment loan fund. The next item is line painting, $4,500. It's I think that is the same.
I missed the number.
4 or 5.
4,500.
The bridge projects and culvert projects, these are, I would say that these should be reserve funds. The bridge projects, like,
And again, you're on this one, not on this one, right? You just, the bridge and culvert projects aren't
Yeah,
there.
they don't show up on our.
We're following along on this one,
yes,
so.
so how long, this is why I made this one vertical.
Yeah, but so we're on the vertical one, there, the bridge projects and culvert projects aren't listed here.
Oh, I think I made an edit, after.
They're on the next project, on the next page.
Oh, yeah, ditching projects, bridge projects, culvert projects are all on this next page.
Yes, so,
New reserve fund.
and then,
Okay, I get it, yeah.
And then, there's only a few more lines, let's see, municipal roads permit, is that the next one we have?
Yeah, that's what I have.
Well, that's on this second, yeah, on this page, we have storm drain maintenance, guardrails, town garage repairs, sander rake plows, paving projects. And then we go into the projects and then the road permit miscellaneous.
So, municipal road permits. What's the year's name? I'm not sure how this got messed up.
That's 1590 from the current year.
Yeah,
The permit's on the next page.
Can I ask what that is?
So the state of Vermont decided to try to address the Lake Champlain pollution issue
Okay,
by forcing towns to improve roads.
okay,
And so that's the origin of it.
okay.
It has not been successful.
Unfunded mandate.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. We fund it.
I think I just moved where my end was.
Okay.
Okay, so storm drain maintenance,
Storm
Yeah.
drain maintenance is the next one on our list. Yeah.
11,000.
How did that compare to last year?
Guardrails and signage.
Wait, real quick, so storm drain maintenance in the last, well, the one we have on the horizontal, or the, it says 4,000, so what's the big increase there?
So that is to do with like just all of the associated cells and everything that's just been like kicked up. It's just gonna create a lot more havoc for the storm drains right now.
And so we're seeing the need for more repairs or more replacements.
Yeah,
As well as cleaning probably.
and that was one. Like, we go back, we look at deeper into the midst of time here.
one of the goals of the grant committee is to capture a lot of those costs, but whether we do is, we
You know,
just
that-
have to see.
That's one that's a little bit,
That's why we should plan for it, so if it doesn't happen,
I'm just thinking about the taxpayers are gonna be looking at this in March,
yeah,
saying, whoa, what? So we
Yeah.
just wanna be sensitive to that.
right.
Josh, while you're looking there, you know, on the vertical sheet, like we're seeing variance, 25, 26 change versus the budget that we adopted. In many cases, it's a large variance because there wasn't anything in there. Is that just because of how the budget was put together last year, or is it from a different line?
which one are you looking at?
He's looking at the final column of,
Yeah, so the proposed, what they have written in there for proposed for this year compared to last year.
Yeah, that may just be not either like. It wasn't done, so then it's like was put off for a year, or because there are other more important things.
I actually think this column might not be accurate because,
Oh no, that column is,
yeah, this column is not accurate. If you look, like if I'm on mileage HD, like the very top, $200 and 24, $200 and 25, but it says the variance is $200. That's not, there is,
That is-
it's the same thing. There is no actual variance. I
we
mean,
had no expenditure of mileage that year, so that we've
oh,
carried.
so all of these are things that we carried over, we didn't.
Yeah, I would not trust this.
Yeah, the numbers just don't make sense, cause like the next line, gravel. $100,000, we spent 156, we budgeted 110, we spent 29, and it still says 110 is the variance. That math doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the math is wrong.
Yeah, well, this is not a sheet that I generated, this is what the accounting software spits out. And I open it as a CSV file in the Google Sheets and print it.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we're doing this now instead of
Yeah.
March.
Well,
because
and I do
March-
feel like, I do feel like, and maybe this is something we pass on to Jonathan as well. It would be a lot easier if we had like these names, last year's, what we budgeted last year, what you're asking for this year.
Right.
So we could just easily compare them rather than, I mean, cause I think us writing all these down. I don't, I mean, I'm not gonna add all this
the
up.
numbers. That like there were numbers in that budgeted line that like didn't match with other places where I would look at what was budgetary, so. It has been an extremely
No.
confounding situation here.
I get that, we just have to use the best information we have, but I think having something where we can make some sort of comparison. And then we can say like, this is why this is what we're working from and this is why we're doing it.
Because
Cause
as a
right now,
board-
I mean, if someone said, why are you doing, this much for this thing? I can just, it's based on last year and what, I mean, like, there's no, I don't know, there's just not a lot of good explanation.
I understand.
Yeah.
And a lot of that explanation is like, took a lot of time to get to like
Yeah.
a number. And. If I'd had. Like. A significantly greater amount of time, I probably would have been able to generate that, but. They're being able to sort of pull this out and have it be in a way that is like.
Well, that's why I wondered since you are changing, you're simplifying,
Right.
if just one other step of going through and taking the number from FY 25.
Yeah, and so like Peter had a question. Over email about, we look at. When we get to the point where we're looking at expenditures and what our spend is. Once we get to that point, I'll have a better, like, I'll have a more complete number. What I wanted to do is kind of go through just like the first pass, here's the numbers. And then, what I'll do is sort of the budgetary as best I could determine, but there are even places where the actual expenditure for some of these is clerical errors that, so like if your actual spend, like for fiscal year 2024, is not documented correctly,
Yeah. I totally I understand that, I just think it would be easier for us and then just in general, as we move to different departments. We go to the clerk, we go to the clerks, you know, the admin budget. If we're getting it in the same format, if we're getting the fire department, like if we're getting everything in the same
That'd
format.
be nice,
It
yeah.
will make it a lot easier for us to compare and see what's going, there might be narrative to go with it, like this number looks much different because. We actually were doing, you know, the accounting wrong and that's fine, it just feels like it's hard to. Compare what's going on, what we've approved last year. And what we're, you know, what you're suggesting for this year right now.
Right, and so, once we get these numbers down, I'll update this sheet with the corrections. And then after this meeting, I'll send that out to everyone so they can review, and then I'll add, because some of these things get merged,
Yeah.
I'll add like a couple of columns that will cross over, like, to sort of like, here are the places where you have to compare like these two lines to this one line, or we're splitting this, but, you know, and then there's a time, like, that was just something that. I couldn't do, before tonight.
And I think it all helps us get prepared because we will, before March, have to have the public town meeting where we explain everything that's gonna be at town meeting, and that includes the budget. And so we're gonna actually have to, someone just left. We're just gonna have to ask, you know, actually explain all these lines. We may have very specific questions. And it'd be easier if we started from a point of actually like presenting things in a way that we can do that.
Well, we're presenting this budget to the community.
Yeah.
This board is presenting it to the community,
Yeah.
so we wanna know what
We
we're
will
talking
be
about.
ready for that,
Okay,
like, this is
So-
not that day.
okay, so let's
That day will
go,
come.
let's keep going with your system here, so we have at least numbers for guardrails and town garage.
Guardrails and signage is next.
Yeah, that's what I have next.
yeah.
5,000,
5,000, okay. Yep,
town garage repairs,
yep,
2,500.
Okay.
Sander rake plow, 4,000.
yeah.
Paving projects, 7,000.
Can I ask a quick question about the town garage repair? Is any of that related to the energy grant that we just got? No, okay.
We could use some of that money in it. I don't, there's some matching associated with that.
The MERV grant?
I think it was just.
No, the MERV is just a grant, there's no matching that has to happen.
And it's split between a lot of buildings, but it's a significant amount of money, it's 300 or something.
Yeah, $320,000.
We should maybe, especially when it comes to like any kind of actual physical building maintenance for the garage, we should check in with Bob, because when as they're redoing, I think installation, doing some other stuff, like it may not be necessary for us to do maintenance if they're gonna change some things out.
Yeah, I think what we've budgeted here is, pretty, it's a small amount of money. That isn't really like, you know, it's really just a summer breaks. Let's see, did you get Sanders, rake and plow,
Yeah,
4,000?
And what is that compared to a line somewhere here that I don't see? Or
So
maybe it's there and I just haven't.
it is called the same thing here.
What number is it?
It's 100-5100-38.09 Sanders rake and plow. We
Oh, there it is, okay.
we budgeted 8,000.
Now, is this equipment?
It's for the sanders to deploy the sand out of the truck.
Well, yeah, so it's an equipment cost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the add-on, and there was someplace that we could actually like reduce the cost, because we had it,
It was $8,000 last year, and you're
Yeah.
saying,
we don't spend.
what number was it this year, 4,000?
this year's 4,000.
4,000, okay.
So 38.09. Once we get this sort of when I get this ordered where the actual items are, make sense, like, I think this was one where we went back and what.
It looks like you haven't spent anything for 2 years or hardly anything for 2 years.
Yeah, like, if you go back to, 22-23, we spent $6,291.51. And then, like, the following year, was, 200, or there's one year that was $212, and that may be just a clerical error, like, did we actually spend $212, or, that is a coding. Coding is extremely important, and there are a lot of things here that are not coded correctly. In the private sector, I've been chastised mightily for not coding my invoices correctly. So you're on notice, Bingham. But yeah, I think 4,000 is a sensible number.
Okay.
7,000 for paving projects. This is the fund, this would pay into the paving fund.
So this would be one that's continually being added to.
Yeah.
This isn't a 1 year
Right.
amount.
This is where we're
Okay.
actually replenishing the fund, so the, when I make my edits and send them out. All the funds actual proposed will be grouped under its own header. So that people understand, like, this is a savings account, this is a checking account.
Mm-hmm.
General fund is a checking account, it's not a savings account. And, but it was quite a tangle to pull all this out anyway, but that $7,000, it should be enough to sustain the paving for a few years and build a little extra in. In a, like, we use a 15-year life cycle based on, what do you call it, grinding?
We're not knowing yet.
Milling. Like where you mill down and apply pavement.
It's a lot more expensive.
Yeah, so we used a 15-year life cycle with milling as our baseline cost, and then extrapolated that out going forward at a rate of paving 1/4 mile every 2 years, and we have approximately 8 units of that. So year over year replenishing, we can probably hold it near $7,000 for a number of years without adjustment to be a sustainable fund.
Cause you said we had 62,000 in there now.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though with the last 2 budgets, we had 15,000 in the budget.
Right, and we were
We were just growing, and we spent 14,000 plus 2 years ago.
Yeah, and that's where that 13,500 number comes in. Like, we spent a little more, but that was maybe like, that was maybe through function, right? 2 years ago.
We did Martin Meadows and Walker Lane last. The proposal that I got to do from the fire station up to the Maple Hill was just under 200,000. That had milled and repaved.
Yeah, so, let's see, what's the formula I used here? It was like, what, 22K divided by 15, like. About 15 years. Yeah, that's about $14,666, but Mark Meadow, Walker Lane, those are not like, those are maybe closer to 20 years. So.
Cause they're not high traffic, yeah.
Exactly.
You just have the traffic going to the health center and to the post office, and then it's just residents.
There's no heavy trucks, so when we took out, we sort of looked at like, glancing at the map, it's like, these are like kind of 15 and these are 20, but we could get into some analysis paralysis on that, but pretty comfortable with $7,000 regular replenishment. Ditching projects, we have $4,500, and This one is, there's not a great deal of ditching, so that we kind of just wanted to carry. Should like, we have to do, one amount of ditching.
Is that dust labor or is that materials? I don't know what you'd use for ditching materials.
It's just for ditching stone, I believe, because of all the water runoff that clean Lake Champlain, they clear
I
water.
mean, the places you put that stone really, it made a big difference.
Yeah.
It really helped.
Yeah.
So.
That's basically what that
Okay.
for is for doing ditching. and stuff
None, yeah,
that's
none of this
not-
is labor costs, right? Because our labor costs are just,
Right.
Yeah, labor's somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's
so-
just.
I couldn't
strictly
picture
for
what the
ditching.
material was.
So like going back to the horizontal sheet, ditching projects. We didn't budget anything last year, but the year previously we budgeted $4,500. I think this is really one that we didn't spend anything because we had a giant one.
2 years of flood.
You had 2 flights,
Yeah.
probably busy.
So,
All right.
What did get done, the federal government paid for, so.
Right. Yeah, right.
that's one that I wanted to keep that, in place, but. If it's definitely, if I was gonna prioritize, like, make any cuts once we get to the. Determining what the municipality needs to pay for in the taxes, that's what we could probably cut.
Mhm.
Like, the municipal roads permit, $1,600. We held $1,500 to miscellaneous items.
Look, like I said, it's a permit. I know, Brandon, you said it had to do with the Lake Champlain stuff. What, we have to apply to for a permit to work on our own roads?
Yes, this is something that I vigorously fought and I contacted legislators about it, but the problem is that they needed a solution. Even though it wouldn't work, they needed a solution and they thought, oh, we'll just have this permit. And in the permit, what they look at is which roads, they sort of choose which roads they think hurt Lake Champlain the most. And I would note that big box stores near Lake Champlain pay a lot less than we do. It's a political thing. It doesn't really work. It's not gonna get repealed.
Right.
We just have to live with it.
It hasn't really changed much, it's in, we've held $1,590 like for the last 2 years. I just rounded up for convenience sake to $10. So then it's 1,500 miscellaneous.
We had oh, yeah, okay, sorry.
And then these the next few are all basically just the estimated maintenance costs on these pieces of equipment. So $100 for the culvert bar.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck with that one, AI.
It's a flamethrower, you mean, right?
Yeah, basically, right? That's what it is.
That's a hot water pressure washer.
That's a lot less fun than we said.
Yeah.
If,
you got the flames, no, not a
I like flavor,
It's really good, it's really good for our insurance rates if we have.
Water's gonna get very hot.
yeah, I mean, flames may actually be safer in that instance, given this been some engineer bring us that for a second. $100 for the hay mulcher, $200 for the lawn tractor. The old lawn tractor that we can probably sell. $2,500 for the backhoe. We would like to replace this. It is becoming a bit of a nuisance. Preferentially, we would like to get an excavator. Instead, an excavator is it's a much more nimble precision tool than a backhoe.
Would that come out of an equipment fund?
Yeah.
That we're gonna, so we should add enough to start covering that.
And, and and I think the, the So, currently in the bank, we have $48,955.84 in the highway equipment fund. And this is one where I couldn't determine if the money had been moved back to the equipment fund.
It was, the problem is that Penny discovered that it was like a $96,000 charge that should have hit that equipment fund and didn't. And so that's why it was depleted.
Right,
So there's no money in the equipment fund?
No, there's 38, it's like 30.
48,000.
48,000, yeah. I mean, there was, but I'm just saying it was like 100.
Got it.
Yeah. So but the backhoe, one of the things like, in terms of like the equipment fund, with, one of the things we'd like to explore is sharing that equipment with the water wastewater department, which has a pretty good, a sizable equipment fund available. So it may be that, like, if we have, this shared equipment, it's cost savings for the utility operation as well, because when you need an excavator, you have to call somebody. Tristan needs an excavator, he has to call somebody. It's difficult to justify purchasing even a modest excavator for the water department. But I think if we can share that cost and share that equipment, it would be a win-win. And we have our budget meeting on Friday. So
More discussions to come, I can tell.
and then
And so the backhoe, you say replace, so is there? This is for July 1st, so are you saying that there won't be a maintenance cost for the backhoe, but there'll be a separate line item
backhoe
for?
would be 2,500 to, because we're still gonna have it.
We're still gonna have it until we replace that with a more modest,
Yeah,
So
and so
belts and oil and
yeah, I mean,
parts. Yeah.
right now it has
so-
a cylinder that's leaking on the back of it, it has a front.
Well,
windshield.
my question is if you're thinking of buying a new backhoe.
it would be, well, we wouldn't buy it backhoe, we would buy
Excavator, yeah.
Okay, and what timetable would that be?
the,
Well, let me say this, I talked to the John Deere salesman last week that stopped by the garage. They have probably a handful of 75 John Deere excavators that are used that are over 5,000 hours that are still in pretty phenomenal shape. For half the price of what a new one costs now,
Which is what approximately?
65,000 for a used one.
Well, I'm just wondering if
A new one's about
it seems like you're like this is the path you're going down. Then by July 1st, which is when this budget would start, you would have potentially the new equipment and not be using the old equipment.
we have about 400,000 here. If we could get that and split it with the water commission, we still have to replenish the equipment fund. To make up for that, when I started to look at, when I got to the end of this list and started looking at the funds, that's where I got bogged down in the mud in terms of it was a little bit I was uncertain exactly where we were in terms of what I could see what we have in the bank,
Yeah,
but it was unclear what was in the general fund that should have been allocated for equipment fund or whether or not that was transferred, so we're gonna sort that out.
I guess it just for clarity, like I'm guessing it's a higher maintenance cost because it's an old it's an old equipment. If we're switching to a newer equipment, I'm just wondering like.
We have to,
Yeah.
that deal's not done.
Got
The $2,500 to keep the maintenance up on the backhoe for the 25-26 seems prudent,
Okay.
and then if we don't go back, that's fine.
Is my memory serve me that we historically we put 50 grand into that equipment fund? You don't know, okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
I think it was traditionally 50 and then it went to 100 last year.
Okay, all right.
There was a chunk of change.
It was a big number and people are gonna be looking at that, that's all.
And
Sorry.
one of the things the you know, in terms of like looking at. Like, where is the equipment fund contribute, you know, the equipment fund expense, like we budgeted $100,000 in 2025. But in terms of what we have expended out of what we budgeted, so we collected that $100,000, but I don't show any expenditure in the projected fiscal year column, so I would have expected that it should show $100,000 is moved.
The $96,000
You
expenditure.
talked a penny about it, this is an expense that was completely messed up, and I can't remember which piece of equipment, but.
TBD. But like, if you wanna make a placeholder for another, like $65,000 into the equipment fund on this budget, at the end here, to cover to replenish some into the equipment fund, but I need to go back and sort out. Cause I don't see that $100,000 moving out of the general fund that I'm looking at from them.
Into the special.
Right, it might not have, right?
Yeah, so I have to track that down.
I was just wondering if that was a cash flow issue, so it just didn't bother to.
Yeah, I think it, around April, May, last year, you know, if it was, things were really rough, and so that might not.
Yeah, so did we move 100,000 in and then take out another 92,000? Like, I don't know. I'm gonna sort it out, but we can, like, so anyway, back to the last few here, the loader. Is pretty good, so that's 1,000. The grader is 8,000. A lot of maintenance costs on a grader. The Mac, 2005, $2,500. $500 for the wood chipper. $5,000 for, what's that?
Just on the grader, one of the big expenses on the grader is tires, and are we?
We've captured that.
Yeah,
Got
we
it,
just
okay,
replaced
fine.
them a couple years ago.
Got it, okay.
And let's see, the Mac 2019 is $5,000. The 2022 GMC is $1,000. The 2015 Freightliner is $2,500. And the Mac 2024 is $1,000.
Just a general question. Is there what is to be gained by having all of these broken out as opposed to have just
That was good.
one big number?
That was gonna be my question. Like, you need to have a number but like, from why isn't there just an equipment maintenance
Good question.
line item?
These could all be
Maybe
merged.
so they can track what you're putting more maintenance into.
Well, I think your department needs to do that, but
Yeah,
why the town budget needs to break it up like that.
Right.
that's a good question. I've been like that since I started, so I just kind of went with it.
I would support combining it as long as you're
Yeah.
keeping track of the individual equipment.
Everything.
It also allows you to shift the money, like,
Yeah.
if
Gives
the
you that-
backhoe is a new one and you don't need maintenance money, but something else breaks down, like,
Yeah.
gives you some flexibility.
It's not a reserve fund though, this is all general fund,
Yeah.
it's sort of like, this is what we're budgeting for.
Yeah.
Maintenance on those things. And, you know, it does give you some clarity, like, okay, well, why is it only 1,000 for this, but it's like 2,500 for that, well, that one gets a lot more up the double.
You said this is all general. We get state aid to town highways. How does that get allocated to any of these line items in the budget?
It doesn't, it comes into the general fund.
Yeah, as a big chunk or chunks.
Yeah, it comes as a regular transfer payment into our bank.
But then that is that money for specific projects?
No, that money is on.
And so we are then using some of that money to pay for some of these things.
Yeah.
So that's revenue to the general fund, but, and again, this goes to the email I had earlier and something I said at one of our public meetings, which is. When we get to warn the item for town meeting and we say, X amount, we approved this amount for these budgets.
Yeah.
And then an amount to be raised by taxes.
Right.
So the amount raised by taxes did not match, was lower than the number that you had on that spreadsheet. Because there's other sources of revenue to support these expenditures.
So we can talk about revenue for a minute, but I think it's better to leave it
Yeah.
up, but
Yeah, no, we don't have to talk about it now, but I think
Just
just
to
we need to explain it.
just to explain it to you and then. I'll explain it again when we actually talk about revenue at the revenue meeting, the total revenue, in terms of like. You know, that includes the school taxes and et cetera, you know, when we take out that on this first section here. That is just revenue and not general revenue, like revenue has,
Are you looking at the vertical or horizontal?
horizontal, yeah, so. if you
And then
go-
the first page,
Okay,
Yeah, go to the first page, right at the top, you'll see that there's 100-2000 revenue. And like, these things are, a lot of these are specifics, you know, held for specific items like the S1 and S2 tax, right? So like, if you take out the school tax, you're left with about $126,000 there. And then if you move down under general revenue, the first line, town current taxes for the fiscal year was, $1,021,213.51. And then there's delinquents, and then coming down under highway grant miscellaneous income. That highway grant is in the current fiscal year, was, you see how there's nothing was budgeted in the revenue? Like, no one updated what the budgeted revenue was. Anyway, no one recalls having that conversation. Clearly, because like, nobody entered that you're supposed to have maintained this, and it was not maintained, so we can't actually compare our revenue budgeted to what our actual revenue was. Which is a bummer. So in that highway grant miscellaneous income, there are also other revenue sources which I don't think are on here. And then I don't think they're captured necessarily in our revenue, in our projected revenue, like. So for revenue sources that, and this is an incomplete list. For revenue. So like, there's programs that we receive revenue from that aren't even captured in like any of the projected revenue. Like, there's a program called Pilot by ANR, and our projected revenue for that is $6,954.37.
payment in lieu of taxes.
No,
No?
yes, this is payment in lieu of
Yeah.
taxes for state forest. And then there's the hold harmless payment, which equals $93,792. I don't really know a whole lot about this program, but the fiscal year state hold harmless payment is $93,792. I think Sandy Ross knows more about this. And based on the municipal tax rate, total municipal listed values of April 1st, total exempt reduction in the value enrollment, adjusted municipal list value, assuming no enrollment, total municipal tax assessed prior year hold harmless payment, total funds to be raised, assuming no enrollment, tax rate of no current use or enrollment, column G divided by D times 100, and then that's how they get back to that number. Right, so like, there's these revenue sources, and then we're going to have the fee, like in the fiscal year, in the current fiscal year, we're going to have revenue come back from expenditures that we've already sort of, you know, we've closed the books on the year for 2023, and we're going to get revenue based on expenditures for that associated with the 2023 flood. So there's significant revenues coming, there's going to be more revenue, a great deal of revenue coming for the emergency period from. Federal Highway Works Administration via the Municipal Assistance Bureau, and there's going to be revenue. Like from FEMA, because FEMA will pay out certain things earlier rather than later, and I think we're more well positioned to do that, so. There's going to be, we're going to get a lot of revenue. So in terms of taxes, you know, in terms of what we need to raise for taxes, that. You know, those expenditures that we've already expended, that revenue that's going to come back is going to soften a lot of the blow on some of these things, so. You know, I'm excited for the revenue conversation because it means we can really like.
So, yeah,
cover the loss
it's,
of the Randalls.
it sounds good, and we will wanna have that conversation. I'm still kind of hung up on the, how do we categorize, if we're getting this revenue and it's not showing like, you know, $100 repair for this vehicle or $2,000, you know. So can we bunch those together in maintenance? This is highway department maintenance on vehicles, you know, something like that.
Of course.
We have to have the detail at town meeting, because somebody's gonna stand up and say, hey, you shouldn't be spending, how much you spending on the grader, you know?
Yeah,
But-
I mean, I'm happy to like collapse even more line items, this was really, you know, this is just the very first pass. You know, and like the like, let's see, 15, 16, 17, 19 plus. 4. And it's
You don't have to add it all up right now, it's.
like it's, you know, it's about 100, yeah, maybe up to about 150,000.
For maintenance. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, no.
so
I
if,
think I added up.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying don't, I didn't want you to put a number out there, because I think you're gonna get it wrong no matter what happens.
yeah,
But I think, I think the concept, we're open to that concept of collapsing.
Yeah.
As long as you guys.
As long as you do the math right.
well, the detail has to be recovered somewhere.
Well, yeah, but I think that's in
I'm
the-
saying the
yeah.
town
Yeah.
doesn't need that kind of detail. Most people will not need that. If somebody wants it, they can get it. That's my thought,
Yeah, they can contact the road commissioner and get a more detailed budget.
exactly, yeah. Because what the town is deciding is what they're gonna be willing to spend for on tax.
Yeah.
Or with tax.
Yeah.
You know, I think the thing we're gonna actually come across is that. Like. We wanna be mindful that, you know. Like, we're going to have this cash infusion. You know, and some of that should be held to replenish these funds that I'm talking about creating, like, we can move some of that into. Like, shoring up these funds to maintain this regular usage, that's gonna do a whole host of benefits for us, it's gonna pay off for decades.
So is there, whether, I'm guessing it's probably not as part of the budget, but is there a way for us to affirmatively vote at town meeting to say, as flood related revenue comes in, you know, so some of it's gonna go to the general fund, but some of it's gonna go to these funds, like, is there a way for us to,
I mean, this is.
I don't know, well, but I don't know if we can just, I don't know.
It comes into the general fund, so.
But to move it to other funds, there's gonna have to be some sort of action, like
Yeah, like,
that money can't be moved there without either, I don't know if it's select board
So-
action or if it's.
Yeah,
we'll get it in the general fund, right?
Yeah,
And then when it comes back, you know, we'll have surplus in the general fund.
and then some will say taxes go down,
yeah,
Yeah,
and that could very well be what happens, but.
the question is like, taxes go down, you know, and then taxes go back up, or taxes go down or a little bit, you know, and some of this we're gonna have to offset the, you know, the change in the grand list. We don't know how the situation with Goddard's quite gonna play out yet, you know, that's not even a done deal. Like, there's,
But At town meeting, we usually have standard boilerplate warning that says that any money that carries over.
Yeah.
You know, is used to reduce taxes.
That's right.
the following
That's
year.
what I'm-
We might wanna add something
Well, that's what I'm
to
saying.
that.
Yeah,
That's sort of a general direction, and you could say up to an amount, you could, there's any number of ways that you could do that, that the voters would approve. Putting money into reserve funds, for example.
Yeah,
Right.
because it saves money down the road.
Right, what I don't wanna do is like currently in writing the budget, create a reserve fund. Like without
It's not
having
required.
cash in hand to kick off that reserve fund. And we won't really have that cash in hand until we're into late in this fiscal period and into the beginning of,
And
well, we're budgeting for.
into next fiscal
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. No, I
There's
understand.
gonna be volatility in there that we just can't avoid.
Well, that's what I'm trying to.
The number one thing should be to pay back the funds that we borrowed from, like the paving fund, the revolving loan fund. I mean, that would be the first step, I would think, because those were already committed and they were in place.
You know, so that is something that, you know, is obviously the first step, but.
Michael, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I was also wanting to ask Carl if you have a sense of the timetable. The money from the July 2023 flood did not come in until September or October 2024. So if you build in that same 14-month timeline, then any success we have with the funds group might not lead till getting those monies back into the coffers in October. So I think that any discussion you have about return of funds in terms of federal reimbursements would need to have a conservative time frame around it. What do you think?
I agree with you. We can't count on it until it's in. We are, I think, more aggressively going for the money this year with the grant committee. And if projects that have been completed are getting invoiced out so that they can get turned around. Plus, we have the highway fund helping us, which is supposed to be a pretty quick turnaround, I believe.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, so, yeah, but thank you. That's a good reminder that we don't have the money until we have it.
You know, and in the federal highway of 2023, a lot of that incomplete work just sat.
Hmm.
And nobody addressed it because we had 2024 flood.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was deep into doing stuff for 2024 when people were handing me things in 2023 and it was like.
Yeah,
I think it's in this-
I think we're a lot more together this year.
Yeah,
Josh, do you have other loan pieces we have to look through to as well? Or not yet? Are you done? Are you done with your line by line or?
I am, I think like, you know, I will, you know. Reorder this and then send something out probably on Wednesday. And then you know, to kind of cover what the you know, to cover the, you know, what we talked about this evening on bird shows, maintenance, highway equipment maintenance. What were the other sections we were gonna discuss?
I have a quick request, and it's just for the town meeting, because I'm thinking in terms of what the taxpayers are watching. So if we could have some kind of asterisk or something that says this is a new line item. You know, they're gonna be looking for, well, what was it last time? Well, it wasn't there. We've decided to change it.
well, that's why I wondered if, like, what he's gonna create for us. Is like, these two line items are now one, so like.
Yeah, exactly.
He's gonna show that, that's what he was saying.
That's but I'd like it shown somehow in the town report,
Right.
if we can do that.
Let me make it and then give it to you and then you.
We can work on that,
See if it
okay.
meets what you're looking for.
Plus the new reserve account, not reserve, but the accounts you wanna have for these.
Longer term spend, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to note those as being either new or consolidated, or whatever they are, but. So that's what we wanna have when we talk about this, I think.
And we'll see some of that consolidation in the admin budget too, particularly with like the fringe and health benefits.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Everybody
which,
wanna keep going?
well, we have,
What are we,
Sun comes up.
What is our other,
I'd like to wait for the next thing you send, personally.
For some of the admin, I do have, in under general government. I have numbers that I put together based on, based on the conversations you and I had, based on, a lot of it just carries over. I haven't heard anything from the listers asking for more, conservation commission, was pretty static. We'll have the fire department next week.
Hopefully.
well, he's available next week.
He is, we could do it next week, I mean, we have a regular meeting, but I don't know.
I mean, this is the most important thing we're working on, so
And I don't
I'd
wanna
rather
have a lot of.
spend a
extra-
half an hour of our 2 hour meeting next week doing that than
absolutely.
doing other stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
One of the places where I created a header called municipality, which, you know, all of the sort of general government function that we have to do as a municipality, it was just all over the place. So that's where a lot of the confusion might be for the taxpayer. The idea was to bundle that so that, you know, like the core function of government that isn't salaries or overhead in terms of like your insurance and benefits. Like outside of salaries, insurance and benefits, here is what like having you know, a municipal building and like the associated things that municipalities need to do in perpetuity. I haven't heard anything from the social services committee.
I did talk to
Social
Judy and
concerns.
I think they'll be ready maybe next meeting as well. That shouldn't take long.
And that's, I think, it's called social concerns, I think.
Yeah.
Is the name of the committee. You have social services here, but I think it's actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Concerns.
So,
Concerns, yeah.
social concerns, there are, I created social services because there are things that were not under the social concerns. You know, and here, this is one of the things where, like, if we have a committee that's coming to the select board asking for a bundled dollar amount, like, much in the same way that Michael can just have his maintenance, can we as, like, you know, people working on the finances, trust the social, you know, like, concerns.
Well, so social concerns, the way, I think there's like a specific amount they get, right?
Yes.
They decide how much to put out, they have a separate budget in the town meeting report, and it's a separate line item in the warning.
Mhm.
And so like we did, all we, from like a town budget perspective is, we have to have is the big amount, like $25,000 or
The final.
whatever the number is, and then they have like a separate document where they break it out.
Yeah, so, but in our.
Cause they might not even be these same groups, right? Like, they could give money, not give money to one of these groups and give money to a different group.
You know, but this is where in our existing chart accounts, they're all listed.
Yeah.
Yes, and they should be, because they're all separate entities, and if we vote to give the senior center $500, the senior center has to get $500.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, we could give that to
Yeah.
Central Vermont Home Health and Hospice.
But then there might be some of these that have nothing on their lines because they either didn't request funds this year or didn't get any.
Or didn't get it.
Yeah.
Right, so there are things that seem like they would have been in social concerns, but were not under the header for social concerns, so like. I'm just gonna have to review.
Well, because Green Mountain Transit's a different line item. They have a request in, that doesn't go through social concerns. Cutler Memorial Library doesn't go through social concerns,
Always,
right?
you agree, we have a warning request from Green Mountain Transit that came in
Yeah.
an email.
Yes,
But I believe we've always had two items. One is sort of their overall request, which I think did go to social concerns, and then the other is the match for the
The
service.
service.
bus service.
Yeah, there are two lines
and
there.
the transit.
Okay,
There's a GMTA bus service and then there's a Green Mountain Transit line. There are two separate lines that.
right. I think only one of those went to social concerns, though,
Yeah,
to that committee for.
and one of them goes to,
Just directly.
it's just a service fee, yeah.
yeah, it might even be a contract that we sign for that service.
Alright, so,
So that's why they might be separate. I see where you've grouped them because they're all kind of similar.
right, so.
what I'll do is I'll create a header. So. Social concerns will have its own, will go back to having its own header, but all of the things that. Like, we'll have 13130 for like social services and then 13135 for.
Butler Memorial Library does not go to the social.
No, that's what I just
Concerns
meant,
Committee.
that's what we were talking, that's what he's saying.
But a lot of this stuff had like it had its own header, like off here and like, and. I don't know that there's any reason to have the like what, like, there's some historical reason that it was set up this way.
Oh, I know what it was.
Well, cause usually every group would
We,
come in
we'd get on
individually.
the floor and we'd be spending half an hour fighting about $100. And this idea of the social concerns group does that discussion and makes the decisions.
We had a 4-hour town meeting and you didn't get to the main items and it was
Yeah.
all over, $200 and $500 items,
Right.
And it was like, no,
Yeah.
let's give the social, and that way it's like, it's limited to only if like one group like forgot something, they come to, and usually they're told. Get your thing in on time next year.
I know that we could probably talk about budget forever, but if we're gonna talk about healthcare policy.
Yeah.
And also get this
Yeah, I
meeting
don't
done at some
have time
point
with that.
this evening.
Well, and
It's
it
almost
does have
7:45.
budget, it does have budgetary ramifications.
Well, I understand, I'm just saying, like, I gotta leave at 8 o'clock, so.
Yeah.
We're down to 16 minutes for your
Yeah.
conversation about healthcare.
Yeah, I didn't realize, I'm sorry, I didn't realize what time it was. What can we talk about in terms of health care, because we need to get that,
Well,
at least to start.
two things, and you all have received my
Yeah.
report.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike,
Thank
you
you.
didn't get it, you
That's
didn't
okay.
get it, but
Yeah.
the two specific things that we need that are time sensitive are to decide which health plan to choose for the plan year beginning January 1st. And in all of these cases, we're talking about plan years that are 6 months out of sync with our fiscal year. So whatever if we decide to do something different, it will have some impact this year as well. I do recommend that we keep the gold Blue Cross Blue Shield CDHP plan for this year. I think it was clear from my review that we are supposed to be offering these to dependents of our full-time employees. I've had a conversation, an email with to Dylan and Tristan, who would be affected. And Bram, as town clerk, is our HR person at this point. So I would suggest that we say, Bram, go see if they want to sign up their dependents for it. And if you need the sheet back from.
So dependents is children.
Spouses and children.
Well, spouses, if they don't work, are dependents, but if they do work, they're not dependents. Like, what's your definition of dependent, I guess? Do you mean a family plan or do you?
Yes,
mean
it's
dependent?
dependents in terms of health insurance include spouses and children.
Okay.
So using their definition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
That's why I was asking.
I think in Tristan's case, they are, and I don't know if we should discuss them publicly, but
Probably not.
Yeah.
We probably shouldn't do individual employee situations.
there are examples where they may be included on their spouse's plan, and they're just gonna compare. And they may get a better deal from Plainfield, or they may decide to stay where they are, so, but that's up to them,
Mhm.
okay.
But we have to offer it, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yes, we do, yes, our current policy, as I understand it,
Said,
is that they are covered, and Bram had to ask for clarity on that. In terms of this year, we should keep the same plan. It is a high deductible plan, and we have a matching health reimbursement account for which we have a formula where we pay 60% of the deductible. I have not reached a final conclusion, and Graham and I have.
I gotta tell you, this, so just so people understand, with these high deductible plans, there are two programs. One is called an HSA, Health Savings Account, where the money is given to the employee, they put it in their bank account, and the town never hears from it again. The other is a health reimbursement account, where in theory, the town is reimbursed at the end of the year. I have found the customer service aspect of that particular plan to be mind-boggling, and it wasn't managed correctly for a number of years. And I don't know what to say, because if you say sign everybody up for the HRA, I mean, I don't know what to do.
Well,
you know?
we have 4 employees who have HRA accounts currently, and Graham did get the access to the account. I still have not heard back from the customer service person.
You won't.
It's like you have to keep opening keys to get to the next door anyway. But we do have an obligation to contribute to.
Right, I mean, I would be in favor of the health savings account from just a logistical managerial point of view, because one of the things about the HRA, in truth, there were really only 2 people, the 2 people who were just signed on recently, so there were really 2 people on it. And there are some very strange questions I have,
But
you know, but
we don't have to decide that, and my recommendation is that we include that in the going forward outside of the budget cycle with the town employees, because there is a very good discussion to have about HSAs versus HRAs. And I'll just leave it there because we don't have to decide that now. The other thing that I would recommend that we do now is offer dental care for our employees. And you all got the email on that. I recommend that we start by offering it to the employee and not dependents. And we take the most popular plan, which is $39.01 a month. There is a requirement through the League of Cities and Towns, who manages this for Delta Dental, that all eligible employees sign up. But even if we had, I think I did the math, 9 employees, so we're talking about $4,000. So it's not much.
And it was promised, correct, at one time?
I have no record of
We have no
that.
record, okay.
There is nothing in the minutes about that. Bram said he
So-
did find an email.
that is an accurate statement, that there was nothing in the minutes which are riddled with omissions. We do have a long time employee who has said that it was promised, and there is an email from the former town clerk making inquiries, which couldn't have come from thin air, so
Okay,
I'm just saying.
And I quote
Well,
that.
unless she, I mean, I'm fine with us doing it, but. Unless she was trying to find out how much it was, so then she could say we should do dental. Like, there are more than one way for you to research dental than being told to by the select board. So I'm fine with us doing it, I just don't think we can we don't need to make logic leaps, we can just say we would like to do
We
dental, you know?
And I didn't make a lot of it,
Yeah.
I just told you what I
Yeah.
found.
Yeah,
The people who, if we sign up individually, they do have the option of paying to add family members, and we can always decide in the future whether we want to do that. And again, you know, outside of the budget cycle, we can take the time to look at the League of Cities and Towns booklet that compares us to our neighbors and all of that.
well, and you make the point, this is a way to keep people interested in working for us.
Yes, it is. It is. So I would make that motion
which one?
that we provide.
Is it, do we have to do a motion for the goal plan thing?
I don't think so.
So-
We just have, we're already enrolled. It's the question is, are we gonna change the plan?
Okay, I just wanna make sure that.
But isn't that a decision we have to make before the end of the month?
Yeah, yes.
Okay,
So we do need to have a motion on that,
Sure.
right? I
Yes,
just,
I would prefer it just because.
I think
to a
so.
certain
Okay.
degree, it takes,
Yeah, I think so.
I have
That's-
had real difficulties with
Yeah.
Blue Cross Blue Shield, so I really want a lot of time to make sure everything's right.
and
Yeah.
it is called Blue Cross Blue Shield Gold.
CDHP Gold,
CDHP
Gold.
Gold Plan.
Consumer Directed Health.
Motion by Peter,
Yeah.
second by Rose.
any discussion, and I would say we should vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
And I would make the motion that we offer dental care through Delta Dental, through the BCLT,
For the individual,
for the individual
Offer.
person.
I second that.
And
Insurance.
I already had the line.
Yeah, well, I have talked over these numbers with Josh, but if you looked in my report, it kind of laid out what they said. There's an application, we have to send a check with the first month's premium. They will send you the form that you can distribute to the employees
Okay,
and whatnot, so.
is it Avery, is that who you were talking to, believe?
Avery was one person and there was other, yes.
So we have a motion and a second.
But I can swing by the office and help you with the details of this, but I'm happy
That's
to do
great,
that.
super.
We're in the discussion phase. Okay, motion and a second.
Can you just tell me the name of the plan?
Oh,
So I can put it in the,
Delta Dental.
it's just Delta Dental.
I can tell you, it's the tier 2 plan, which is their most popular, and if you bear with me a second.
And you said that was the Vermont League of Cities and Towns.
Through the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, yes.
thank you for all this research work.
Yes.
Just two, right? It's just the two here.
It's the 2,
Okay, tier 2 plan.
yeah, you can see 3901 is.
Got it.
And I think I included the attachments, right?
Um,
So you have the,
Yeah, I mean, I can call them tomorrow.
Your second to that?
So.
We
Might have been Carl.
ready to vote? All those in favor, say aye.
I just trying to get the notes for.
Yeah, thank you. I know you have to leave, so we don't.
Any other points hanging from that? Is there anything that's in the speak?
Can I ask who, when you, as we move forward with other personnel issues that didn't have to be done this month. What's the plan for employee feedback? Will they be invited to be part of a group that's gonna discuss it, like how?
yeah, in the past, and again, the minutes are spotty in terms of how much detail was in here. Sometimes it said this plan, a subcommittee, one of the select board members and someone else sat down with the group of employees. They had a meeting, they went over stuff, they got this feedback. In other cases, there was nothing, but I think we clearly would want to do that. To discuss, for example,
and Blue Cross Blue
HSAs and HRAs.
Yeah, Blue Cross Blue Shield has volunteered. And to have somebody answer questions, so we can get a group of people together, we can do that, that's fine.
Yeah,
We should do that.
Yeah.
So
We talked about that.
just for clarity, so the employee would pay 10% of the premiums, is that what I'm to understand?
On dental?
No, I'm thinking about on the Gold Blue Cross Blue Shield.
that what happens now?
Without a change in policy, that is what would
Okay,
happen.
yeah, no, I just, because it hasn't been done correctly, so I just wanna make sure that.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that is our current policy,
Okay,
although our
so that
neighboring
was-
towns pay 100%, we might want to consider something different for next year.
Well, sometimes like Barry town pays 85%, I'm just saying, whatever, I just wanna know, because I wanna set it up correctly
Yeah.
starting January.
Yeah, no, the motion did not propose any change in that at
Okay,
this
okay,
point.
that's great,
That's a fair discussion for the future.
Mhm.
I just wanna know.
Okay, I think we've already talked about our next meeting, which is gonna be, did you have something else?
Yes, and when you were reading the
Oh.
revenue stuff, the hold harmless was in a section of stuff where you were talking about listers. I believe what that was the legislature last year in their flood emergency bill passed one of the provisions, held towns harmless for when they abated the statewide property tax. That piece. The legislature will need to do that again, and I would recommend that we send a letter to our legislative delegation. Asking them to include that provision again, because we did abate that this year on numerous properties. It would be good. I don't know that it's necessary, but I know Senator Ann Cummings chairs the committee that will oversee that.
Okay,
I think it's a good thing that we.
can we direct our clerk office to do that?
Sure.
Yeah, do you wanna give me the text of?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
That'd be great.
Authorize somebody to sign. To all five.
Do you wanna just bring a letter to the next meeting and we'll put it on? the agenda? Or just,
Yeah, it'll be next Monday.
then we can just
Yeah.
say what the letter,
I'll
get
do
the letter and then we'll just, yeah.
And then it'll be next Monday, the 9th. at 6 at the Opera House.
Opera House, yeah.
And I guess we just need a motion to adjourn.
Do we need to do anything with warrants?
We didn't put anything down.
We signed them.
Yeah.
I think pretty.
Let me get some what's in there.
Motion to adjourn? I don't think we can. We can just do it next week, I guess.
Yeah. It wasn't on the agenda. I'll have to talk to Krista about
I
that.
second that motion.
Thank you.
Patty seconds.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in, Mike.
Hey, Michael.
Don't stand in front of me.